French bread was a weapon of the resistance? There was a celebrity rhinoceros? And redheads were seen as monsters in ancient Greece? I've obviously been reading the wrong history books because these stories sound mind-blowing. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 unbelievable historical facts that change everything. 25. Dictator City. Those living in the cultural center of Vienna in 1913 may have seen some strange-looking people walking around. In particular, a short, angry-looking Austrian man with a little mustache. This was, of course, Adolf Hitler. He was based in Vienna at the time, as were future world leaders Joseph Stalin, Leon Trotsky, and Josip Broz Tito. People who went on to become monsters at worst and dictators at best. I wonder if they took a training course together. 24. Sybil Ludington. If you don't know the name Sybil Ludington, you really should. The legend goes that at 16 she rode her horse for 40 miles in the Hudson Valley. The year? 1777, 2 years into the 8-year-long Revolutionary War. Why was she out on a horse at midnight in those turbulent times? Apparently she was rallying troops to battle British forces who were on the march. Is the story accurate, or is it a piece of propaganda? Sadly, not much evidence exists. 23. Jewish refugees were turned away. Amazingly, Jewish refugees weren't allowed to settle in the USA during World War II. In fact, authorities saw them as a security risk. Even President Roosevelt said so. The case of Herbert Karl Friedrich Bahr was used to refuse entry to other refugees. Bahr, who traveled over from Sweden in 1942, was found guilty of being a Nazi spy. This shamefully led to a massive crackdown on Jewish people seeking protection from Hitler. 22. The Texas Revolution. It's been part of the US since 1845, but Texas hasn't always been Texas as we know it today. Back in the early 19th century, the old Mexican Republic wanted people from outside to come and live in what would become Texas. It wasn't exactly a desirable area by any accounts. Americans settled there and they brought their slaves along to pick cotton and such. However, in 1829, the Republic wanted to emancipate or free the slaves, but some didn't want to give them up, leading to tensions that helped fuel the Texas Revolution of 1835 and 36. This changes things from the history books, which say the revolution was pretty much about colonists battling for their freedom. 21. Vive la baguette resistance. French bread is delicious, and you gotta love that long shape. Others who loved that shape were the resistance fighting against the Nazis in the Second World War. Baguettes became useful for concealing secret information. As long as they didn't encounter any hungry Nazis, well, the plan worked fine. 20. The fate of Stalin's eldest son. Stalin was Russia's brutal dictator, but he himself suffered a loss at the hands of the Nazis. His eldest son, Artillery Lieutenant Yakov Djugashvili, is thought to have spent years in a German prison camp after being captured. Hitler went on to use Yakov as a bargaining chip. Not that this worked on Stalin, who refused the deal. Yakov eventually died in 1943 after reportedly encouraging a guard to shoot him during a failed escape attempt. The death was kept under wraps for years. 19. First speeding ticket in history. How far do speeding tickets go back? Well, one of the first was mentioned in 1896 when one Walter Arnold shocked passersby traveling in his carriage at, wait for it, 8 miles an hour. It took one police officer on a bicycle to bring this animal down. Arnold then received a fine of approximately 4 pounds. I should point out that 1 pound was the equivalent of 100 pounds, or $132 in today's money. 18. Poisonous skincare. In the days before people knew what went into their beauty products, Victorians were busy eating arsenic. Yes, arsenic. The poisonous chemical used to bump people off in murder mysteries and such. It was an ingredient of Dr. Rose's arsenic complexion wafers, said to keep your face lily white. Because of course it will, it causes an autoimmune skin disorder called vitiligo. The Victorians were actually aware of the dangers, but believed small quantities of arsenic were safe to consume. Dr. Rose's arsenic complexion wafers. All the fun of arsenic in a wafer. This video is not brought to you by Dr. Rose's arsenic complexion wafers. 17. Clara, the celebrity rhinoceros. Bizarre as it sounds, people went crazy for a celebrity rhino back in the 18th century. For the better part of 20 years, this magnificent beast wowed the crowd on their very own European world tour after capturing the public's imagination. There was even a name for the phenomenon: rhinomania. Clara also had a carriage drawn by 8 horses, and with her size, well, she'd certainly need them. 16. Writing schmiting. Why write things down when you can just debate words and ideas? Amazingly, this was the view of Socrates, one of history's all-time great thinkers who lived in ancient Greece between 470 and 399 BCE. He did have his own written material in the form of scrolls, which he'd memorized. However, he wasn't keen on the general public to start writing stuff for themselves. This changes everything, because if he'd gotten his way, we wouldn't have great literature. Or shopping lists, really. 15. Zombies exist. Let's go back to the late 15th century and the period known as the Renaissance. You'd think it was gorgeous Italian people painting masterpieces and composing music on gondolas. I mean, that definitely happened, but you'd also see gruesome figures with their limbs falling off and their faces just disintegrating. This was because of syphilis, which led to zombie-like symptoms. So while these weren't actual zombies, it would have been like living in an episode of The Walking Dead. That's a spin-off? Walking Dead, the Renaissance era. 14. Telephone tabby. Cat lovers, you're going to want to look away for this one. Mad scientists at Princeton University in 1929 opened up the head of a sedated feline so they could attach wires to its brain and use it as a living telephone. The idea was that by connecting the cat's auditory nerve to a receiver, you could talk into its ear and the person at the other end heard your voice. The findings of this experiment were, yikes. 13. Missile to the moon. Does launching a nuclear rocket at the moon sound like a good idea to you? No? I'm glad it's not just me. But that's exactly what the American government wanted to do back in 1958. They seriously wondered if attacking the moon would send a strong message to their Cold War enemies that the US wasn't to be messed with. Project Nuke the Moon would definitely have changed everything, in that our weather system would be shot without its gravitational pull. Now, when in doubt, just nuke everything. That's the American way. Or grab a marker and change the trajectory of a hurricane. That'll do it. Just nuke the hurricane. That's right, you want to nuke hurricanes. Oh, awesome. 12. The man with a rod in his brain. Could someone survive with a metal rod lodged in their brain? The answer, surprisingly, is yes. When 19th century American railway worker Phineas Gage accidentally triggered a gunpowder blast with an iron tool, it blasted the rod through the center of his skull. Ouch. Luckily, he survived the experience and died 12 years later, though of course he was never the same again. We have Phineas Gage to thank for showing a link between brain damage and changes in personality. All I could think of when I read that title was The Simpsons, the rod up that man's butt has a rod up its butt. Just full disclosure here, that's immediately what I thought of. 11. When the Allies and the Nazis joined forces. Throughout World War II, they were deadly enemies. But there was one time they teamed up to fight Hitler. In 1945, the German-held Castle Itter in Austria was abandoned. Well, by the guards at least. I mean, the prisoners were absolutely still on site. So a plan was launched by an American tank battalion and a team of rebel Nazis to defend and protect them against approaching SS forces who would rather kill the prisoners than let them go free. 10. Don't burn the witch. Hold on, no one was burned during the famous Salem witch trials? Seems like the classic story isn't accurate. Suspected witches were definitely punished in late 19th century Massachusetts. However, this happened through hanging. Not exactly a nicer option, but I guess better than burning to death, right? Plus, many of the witches ended up behind bars. 9. The president who was assassinated by cherries? Some US presidents die violently at the hands of their assassins, and others bite the bullet due to their cherry fixation. Commander-in-Chief Zachary Taylor attended a party in 1850 where he went overboard on the cherries and milk. The fruit and dairy are believed to have given him gastroenteritis. Quite the exit for a president and a war hero, though the heat has also been linked to his death. 8. The dog who defused a bomb. Juliana the Great Dane saved her owner's life during World War II in a surprising way. She did it by having a full bladder. When a German bomb landed in their home in Bristol, England, she put the explosive out by simply urinating on it. This act led to her receiving the Blue Cross Medal in 1941. The medal was later sold in 2013 for around $1,500. 7. The Bloody Mary was originally bloodier. A Bloody Mary was first served in Paris in 1921. Now, Bloody Mary isn't the most appealing of names, but it could have been a lot worse. It started out being called a bucket of blood. Delicious. This is linked to a possible origin story for the Bloody Mary's name. There was reportedly a Chicago bar called the Bucket of Blood, which had an employee called Mary. 6. Mustache Cup. Are you worried about dunking your mustache in your cup? Well, the Victorians had a solution for that. They called it the Mustache Cup, and it featured a guard that fitted over your facial hair. This protects you from any gloop that might get stuck on your face. Sadly, this invention doesn't seem to have survived into later centuries. A shame for mustache and beard wearers everywhere. 5. Hang the pig. In the late 14th century, a child died after being attacked by a pig. Naturally, a terrible situation, and one where you'd expect the animal to be put down. And it was, only in crazy Middle Ages style. The poor creature received a visit from local law enforcement who put it behind bars. It was later hung. Whether they made it into sausages and bacon later is not clear. 4. Redheaded vampires. People with red hair have it tough today, but in ancient Greece, the prejudice was at a whole nother level. The fact that they had pale skin and needed to stay out of the sun was enough to convince the population that these guys were evil. Now, this isn't a proven fact due to the word vampire not appearing in the English language till 1732. Of course, there could have been vampires back then, only the Greeks had another name for them. Either way, it's bizarre and wrong to think that redheads are members of the undead. I have red hair in my beard. But I'm extremely Irish. It's in my heritage, so, it's there. It's just not here. It's only here. 3. St. Lawrence. This religious figure died brutally in 258 CE on the orders of Emperor Valerian. The story goes that he was placed on a gridiron and roasted to death. Nasty, but this was a fate he reportedly took in good humor. Can you believe he actually told his torturers to turn him over because he was well done on one side? 2. U.S. war casualties. After World War II, America learned a sobering statistic. A combined total of over 400,000 people had been killed in the conflict. That included both military and civilians. 6 of these casualties died in the USA itself, which makes their deaths extremely unusual. Reports say that a woman and 5 children were hit by a balloon bomb delivered to Oregon by the Japanese. 1. Gladiator merchandise. Ancient Roman gladiators were apparently so popular you could buy merchandise after watching their violent exploits. They had their very own clay action figures, which I'm guessing weren't very posable. Plus, things got icky with a few drops of sexy gladiator sweat. Why not spread it all over yourself as an ancient aphrodisiac? You could also purchase items such as oil lamps and glassware that showed exciting scenes from their battles. This makes modern day toy collectors look like small potatoes. And that's it for our rundown of unbelievable historical facts. If you're hungry for more out there history, then this video on historical events that few people know about should be right up your alley. So click this here and I will check you again either here or what other video you pick. I'll be there, I promise. Oh, well, maybe if it's not one of our older ones. I didn't get here till 2015, so if it's older than that, I might not be there. But I'll see you soon.